Hey everyone. I mentioned streaming the close. I just wanted to kind of see if they'd come back and hold off these areas here. We were watching that 245 to 248, 250 window, along with that 254 and all the way through till 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock had that really nice break. They didn't quite take out highs before 3, but that's okay. I usually give it that first 5-minute window, which they did right here. They kind of came and stalled off 7.6 though, and I figured 7.6 could be a bit of an overhead. We knew, I kind of drew like this mid zone today because I knew that we had risk back to 5.3 and 5.8 that I had mentioned earlier. So this area here was still an area that they could take this back to, basically. And that was exactly what they did. They did hold off kind of like right in between there, so that's good. They kind of held like right off 5.4. And when I went and measured these ranges here, they're aligned pretty well with with our areas. What I mean by that is we had like the 17-point break, 22-point break is right here. This is kind of where they stalled, and that would give us that break of 7.7. And when I measure 33 points up from here, it takes us right to the zone. Do you guys see that? 6, 7, 8, 8. And then a 44-point break would get us back to 6799. Retest, basically 6800. And then when I measured a 66-point break from this structural hold right here, this is what would get us those 6820s that we're ideally looking for this week, okay? In theory, we said that we wanted to try triggering, where is it here? Why is that not? We wanted to try triggering 66 points off open today, 66 to 68 points. That was the goal. So I think we could see some structure breaks right here. 8.4, 8.2 had the most overhead for me today, along with 7.8. I also figured that this could be the 115 point break off lows. So 109 to 115 points, 109, 110, these are the increments of thirds. And these are also some core breaks. So the 115 point ratio is what could get us zone entries. Do you guys see that? Right here. So there's a lot of confluence with these spots right here. I already went over this, all of this on Discord today, but we'll just kind of cover it one last time. And then from the actual weekly lows, around that 25 area, these areas are around that 150 1 point range. That's like the half ratio of 300 for 346 256, and this is what could set us up to get basically the 173 point break, which is half of 346. So there's a lot of alignment here with 6799, 6788. I don't know if they can get there today. Today I was only really looking for the 6778, 6784 potentially in real time. So, and mostly relative to what they do during this period. So we're trying to get to this green zone here that I highlighted. That's the goal. Green area is what we want to achieve. So 6771 or 78. 6, 7, 8, 4. This is what we failed to do the last time, so just keep that in mind. So is everyone on the same page? These are the huge areas today, so good afternoon. definitely off 7-8, you definitely have to start kind of tracking a bit. I think that if they want to pin the close, they'll take this there. What do you guys think? How many people here think that we have an odd of getting to 6, 7, 8, 8 today? So the odds were not that high. I'll set this poll for 5 minutes. Based on where we opened, I figured that 7, 8 to 8, 4 is probably makes more sense for this, especially if they take it back to these areas here. Like, I feel like if they would have held this area in here, closer to like 70, 67, 60, 61, we probably would have already hit this here. Do you see this? Do you guys see this or no? So had they held closer to here, this range in here, I think we would have already triggered 8-4 right here. So there is some compression. It's that 5.5 point ratio once again. Off these actual lows right here, it's about 7 points. Okay, so like closer to like 8.5. But I do think 8.4, 8.3 is really calculated, so. Okay. So they are reducing range just a tiny bit, and I can already see it from this stall here at 7.8, and this is probably that 5.5, 5.75. You guys see it? It's already starting, and this is because of this right here, like this. And in case you guys forgot, these areas were basically the 128 point structural holds. Okay. Where is it? From here. Okay, do you see it? Do you guys see that? Need to make sure everyone's on the same page. You guys all see this? So they did hold 128 points, but obviously holding 132, 133 would have been a little bit better. It's still fine though, like off 5.8. Okay, but do you see how this could easily be? Do you see that? It's not bad, but I do think that they could have taken out 7.8 there if they didn't breach that just by a tiny bit. And our more calculated areas, like we said, were off 30, which is where they held earlier. Okay, do you see that differential here? So if there was a calculated range off 5.7, this is probably close to like 5, 5.25, 5.75. It's like roughly 5 points. Do you see it? Do you guys see that? It's pretty close to being the same exact thing as last time, okay? And it makes sense because there is more calculated ranges closer to here, okay? So there's a little bit of a breach. Let me know if this makes sense to you guys. Does that make sense to everyone? These are the 128 to 132 point ratios off the lows. There's about a 5 point offset here. And it's kind of the differential between there and there. If you pay really close attention here, you guys listening? Look, it's about 1 to 2 points, okay? Do you see that? Off the lows. You guys paying attention? It's the same sort of idea. Okay, do you see that? So that means that they can afford, if this area here, do you see it, is more calculated, but they sustained off the max range, which was 5.2. Does that mean that they could afford that 2-point breach right here in between? Do you see it? It's exactly 2 points. Do you guys see that? Because that's the differential between 128 or 132. Okay. So if they held 128, there was a little bit of a buffer here. So they held closer to like 129, 130. And obviously when they had held earlier off here, this was the more ideal area to break, which implies that when and if they take out highs, they could take it out. This is that 4 points. Do you see it? It's the same idea here. Okay. Or the same idea here. Do you see that? So which area do you think is going to have the most overhead? What do you guys think? Do you see this? Keep paying attention, guys. This is really calculated. Are you guys listening? Off the higher lows from yesterday morning, or real-time lows from yesterday. Do you see the overhead? On 132-point ratio from yesterday's real-time lows. Isn't this insane? Do you see that? Yesterday's real-time lows was what? 664675 plus 132 equals 6,778.75. Where are we stalling right now? Thank you, Boulder. There's no reason for anyone in here to not be green. I'd be extremely disappointed. So 6,778.75 is a pretty big overhead. If we expand off there, that's where I think we could start tracking range. We could probably even track it off yesterday's actual open first. So yesterday's open was 6,657.75. Okay, that should be aligned with the zone. Do you see the confluence here? Weekly open was where? And if you think about it, where was weekly open, you guys, this week? 6654, right? Do you see the confluence here? So taking out 8.7 implies we could get a zone break, okay? And there's the confluence from weekly open, weekly lows, higher lows, real-time open, real-time lows, today's open, yesterday's close. There's confluence from every single direction that you look at this, okay? This would be like a 64 to 66 point break off session open, session lows. Session open was 2.5. Do you see it? It's not a coincidence. Okay, the actual session today opened a little bit lower, so we're trying to offset that, but that's where there's confluence around 8.2. 8.4. Nice, Katie. I'm so happy for you. So the confluence is definitely there, okay? And we know from these actual lows, we can hit those 107, 108, 115 point ratios. If we hit 115 point ratios, guess what? That's 67.90. 115.25 or 115.5 is a third of 346 points. Is everyone on the same page? If you're hitting a third of that, okay, off the actual lows, half of 346 is closer to 773, 173. So 676, 6799, 6798. Okay. I'm just going to go over the confluence here. This is the same thing as hitting 128 points off actual real-time lows, or the same thing as hitting the 80 point break off, where was it? Right here. That's a core-to-core break, those 70 point intervals, okay? Or the 150, which is half of 256 and 346. Do you guys see the confluence here with these ranges? So above 988, 87, 90, there's a lot of overhead around that 67, 98, 99 area too. Okay? If we can get these types of ranges, what could that mean for us for the rest of the week? If we're hitting already 173 points, or even 115, because 115 was the third ratio. In terms of time, it's a shorter week this week, right? We have roughly 3.5 days. Just over 3.5 days, like 3.75. Right? Are you guys ready? Okay, so right now is also, if we hit a third of the range, which is 115, roughly 115.5, okay. And we already determined that that would be the same thing as entering the zone, potentially. And we do that in the, so this is the third of 346. In the third of the time, because this is about 1/3 of the week, right? Do you guys understand that concept? Because we still have tomorrow and we have a half day on Friday, correct? Okay. In terms of the overall week, by end of session today, we'd be hitting how much points of time? So we have 3.5 days this week. So this would be end of day today would be 2 days. That's half the time, right? If we hit these areas overnight, 173 points, by half the time, what could that imply? I need you guys to understand this. This is really important because a lot of people are going to miss this trade. And it's the same thing as them sustaining 173 down, okay? What would this imply? First of all, we're hitting a 256 point break right here, you guys. This is 256 points off last week's lows, okay? For starters, 6781 is 256 points off lows. First and foremost, that's huge, okay? Okay? First and foremost, that's 256 points off lows. Is that not huge? What would this mean? If we hit 256 points today, and we still have half the time, or 115 points, which is a third. Okay, do you see how these areas are right to that next zone? Yeah, because that means that we could get six, basically that's the top of our zone. 6988, 67032. That's for starters. Okay, this is on like a really high ratio. Or at the very least, 173 points from here would get you what? Oh, look at that. That's back to all-time highs. Do you see the confluence here, guys? Like, this is insane. Look at this. Do you see that? Look. It's crazy how accurate this is. Okay. So, does getting into this box right here as early as today, ahead of the 28th, because remember what I said, if we can get back to here by the 28th, we're already at an odd of getting back to highs, right? Like 68.20s, 68.30s, basically back to this median point right here, this mid-supply zone that brought us down in the first place after we failed 6838, correct? And that was the gap that had this volatility happen in the first place because they didn't digest the channel. And the channel has to digest. You can't gap open at a channel without digesting it first. That's why that gap got filled down. Gaps don't always have to get filled down. This specific gap had to get filled down. Does that make sense? Because that's a digestive price area. That's not an area that you can sweep. Sometimes gaps don't get refilled because of the price point and the kind of implied behavior of that price. The implied behavior of your 30s and 40s has to digest. You can't just bypass that area. That's why they brought it back down. Okay? So, in theory, this was also the 346 point gaps right here. Okay? In theory, see how these would bring us back, like the mid-month candles. In theory, this could get us back to highs. Okay, if we had a 115 point move today, at the very least, that's the incremental fourth ratios, right? This is also the same thing as 128 to 132 points off this low right here, which is back to the November 17th candle. Okay, I'm giving you guys all the ranges, so there's no way that you guys can keep missing these. Okay, so we know that these are the big spots, and if we can get there as early as overnight tonight, I think that that could put us at a really good odds. So like, let's work with 115 just because we can kind of range lower from here. 115. Okay, that could maybe get you back to these midpoints right here. Do you see that? Right here? Right here? That can get you back to the channel. So the 115 point ratios are calculated back to our 6838, 6844 channel. Do you guys see it? And the gap. I just want to highlight that because I think that that's important. Do you see that? That area there is basically calculated back at this gap range right here. Okay, off open close ratios. Someone write this down so that this is not just random spots in here. Okay, these open close can get you back to this open close in terms of your high and low. Make sense? That's also a third of 346 and the third of your time duration for this week, which is actually really interesting. Whereas if we take it from our And that also can get you back to these structures here, these mid structures. If we look at this from a high ratio, like where we currently are, do you see how it's aligned to your opening range? Which is why they could maybe stall it here. Do you guys see that? Do you see that? From a high to low ratio. Let me just delete this so it's easier to see. Do you see that? Look. These areas here are linked to this. So are we already at an odd now of entering this candle based on math? Yes, because we're already breaking into it. These areas off lows are already aligned back to 115 points here. This is a 115 point break right here. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? So at the very least, if we can break to here, guess what? These areas should align with, off that 90 spot, the retest of these failed spots right here. Okay, these areas here. Do you see it? Like 6906, 6909. That's a third of the range. And that would make sense because that would usually leave like a little bit off, right? So is 115.75 points the best in terms of odds? So think about it this way. Okay, these should align with like open close. Do you see it? Are you guys listening still? This is going to blow your minds. Are you guys listening? Look, off an open close ratio, okay? That's what that would imply. That's a third of the range. It should be about 30 points. Remember how I say that there's about 30, 34 points offset, 26 to 30 points? Do you see that? This is the kind of odds that these areas would give you. This should be the exact same right here. Isn't that insane? And we still had room down right here to 2.4 and 2.3, which would make this channel area extremely calculated. Anyway, I wanted to show you guys that because I feel like it's important to know where these offsets come from. And the kind of odds they could give you. So them hitting these areas here is what would give us odds of the channel. And what would give us odds of maybe getting back to the zone, but potentially stalling, okay? So the higher in range we can break, obviously like closer to 173, right? Because this from here, that's that 150. This is probably that 256, right? From here, that's the 346. That's another way of looking at it. It just depends if you're dividing it by thirds or full ratios. It's the same thing. Isn't that cool? Whereas if that's off close, okay, or open. Whereas if you did break these 115 point ratios, then you have higher odds of clearing this. And you can think of that as like the net difference. What's 173 subtract 115.50? That's like 57 points. That's probably 57 points from like these lower highs. Isn't that an insane amount of confluence? And look at where they're testing guys ahead of 336 and 350. They're hitting our spots here. Uh, 6,784 being tested. 6,784 is huge. I think that we still could have an odd here of getting to the zone as early as today. Especially if 8.4 is taken out with that kind of volume and liquidity. Hopefully this helped you guys stay long. Did you guys hold for 8.4? Because we already are aware that 8.4 is huge. That means SPY's hitting 675. And I think SPX would mean that it's hitting core areas 6766, 6768. So same sort of idea with SPX. SPX would be hitting core ranges here. And I think last time we said 6788 on SPX is the same thing as 6820s on ES. So that would make sense. These are also the 7-point offsets we talked about here with this breach. So, and that's closer to 8.5. I think we have an odd of getting to the zone. This looks pretty promising, I think. What do you guys think? I have to focus a bit, so I'm just going to focus on my spots, but... What time is it? So if they want to pin this in the zone or try getting it there, these are definitely pinnable areas, so we do have to be a little bit careful now, just because obviously there's not that much time, and we know that they could stall range. If they take out the zone before 350, what do we have odds of? I'm going to set that for 5 minutes and see what you guys think. Can you guys vote on that, please? Today's odds are close to 8.8 and 67.90 had a lot of odds, like 67.90, 90.5. This area here. 8.5 does have overhead though here too. These are upper core ranges. And they could easily start stalling these areas here if they want to pin the close closer to this range in here. A lot of this is going to depend on what they do in the next 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes before the close. Like before 350. Let's get some more votes, guys. It's good to have an idea of what others think. I would say that that's not going to happen unless they clear probably 8.5, 8.6 before 350. Like if they test 7.8 during this time, then we definitely have that odd of this area here. Is 678,485 enough to be considered a max range for today's session if they wanted to stall here for real time? You guys, come on. I can just shut off the stream. Is this area enough to technically be considered a max range for today's session if they really want to stall here in real time and just pin the close? Yes. This window here should give us a really good idea on what exactly they want to do over the next 5 minutes. I would think at the very least we'd have to be above 8.4. Oh, I think we will get zone entry today, but it's just the matter of whether or not they're going to do it in real time or after hours is really all it is. And if they're going to clear this area here between like 345 and 350. Because this is the area where they can start reducing range if they really wanted to. Does that make sense? Like this is already probably at least a 4-point reduction here. Okay, I'm gonna just focus a little bit and then if I have anything to add, I'll... If you People asking about overnight conditions in real time is insane. So remember what I said, if they start taking out high of day before 348 and they start breaking to 6788 by 348, 349, we could easily try getting 67 9899 6800 6801, okay? 6787 being tested here at 48, 6788 test here at 348. This is extremely calculated, you guys. These are huge spots for ES to be triggering, especially into today's close. 6788 before 350. This is perfect timing for them to try giving some odds. We actually got zone breaks, guys, at 348, 349. That's insane. See if they can clear it. There's more calculated odds today, though, closer to 6790 and 90.5, like this area here. So I am watching this spot here, too, very closely. Let me just move this down a little bit closer to here. I have alerts going off, though. So we'll see. If they can clear this area here before 350, then our odds of breaking to here get super high, okay? These are really big areas for ES to be trading in either way, ahead of the 26th. I don't think they've cleared A8 yet, though, right? They tested it. They tested all the A7.75. Let me just clean this up. Like right at the zone stall here, too. But they're still holding 8584 before 350. So that can easily give 350 a shot of testing 88. 6788, 8875 tested in the first 5 seconds here of the 350 flip. I think I'm going to cover a tiny bit here just to be safe. Holy. They're really trying to give that clean stick break through A8. 6788 close here, guys, at 350. That's insane. 350 getting exactly 6788 close is insane. That means they could give us that 6800 today. I did take a tiny bit off just in case, because that is a really big spot around 88 and 90. Do I have alerts set at 8-9? Are you guys excited? I can't believe they're actually doing it. Those contracts earlier that I covered at $1.80, I had left half. I had left 4 more contracts, and those are almost at 3. I don't know if we get 3. I did cover some at 250, but I did just take some off right now at this 3 break. Look at these snaps, guys. Look at them take this. They're going to try pushing all the way to these areas here. If they can break this range here before 355, are you guys listening? That would be the only way possible we can trigger 6820s in today's session. I don't think they would do that in real time, but maybe after the bell, which would be absolutely insane. We talked about that on yesterday's overnight conditions as today being technically the earliest odds, and that would give us the highest odds of expansions back to 6,888 as early as the 28th. $67.90 is a really big spot here around 90.591. There's nothing in between here, which is there's no overhead around 94, 95, 96, 97. Usually when that's the case, they sweep it. So that's why I was thinking that they could just keep pushing into the close here, because I don't really have anything in between right here. I hope you guys caught this. These are too big of trades to not be catching them, you guys. We don't get core-to-core breaks like this all the time. And it makes me sad when I see so many of you guys miss it, even though everything goes as planned. Well, these are core days. I don't really know what else I would call them, but... Okay, so 354, 355. I would say that if they can try triggering above 94, because that's half the bear zone here, okay, this area here, then we would have these odds in real time. If they start stalling around here, this is where they could keep it pinnable between these areas here. This is going to be the point of the day that they're going to give these max range scenarios, or whether or not they're kind of capped for the session today. How many points is this total now off lows? Do you guys know? Well, any core days, usually. Core weeks. How many points in range did they reduce that by? I think this is, oh wow, that's the 5.5 points once again. 5.5 points, I would bet money is close to these areas here. Yes, it is. Hold on. Because 9.8 is the overhead. Yes, it is. Do you see that? They're already reducing range here a little bit, exactly at 354, 355. That doesn't mean that they can't get there, but those odds in real time are probably reduced unless they try turning it back around immediately off the 5-6. These are definitely enough to be considered some max ranges for today's session. In general, though, these are still really huge spots. Where do you guys think that they'll pin the close? And how many people think that they can still trigger 6798, 6799 in real time? I think that those odds are reduced after where they stalled at 5-4, because 5-4 should have given that range break to 9-8. And we had higher odds anyway for after the bell today. And plus, these areas around 6, 7, 8, 8, 90, 91, these are super calculated ranges for us to close in today. So I wouldn't even be upset if they closed us in these areas here either, or anything above 8-4. 8-4 pin. How much time do we have left? 2 minutes? I hope they pin us in the zone. At this point, we're better off. But 8-4 is not bad either. Anywhere in this area is not bad. 7-8, 8-1, 8-4 is still fine. It's still a good reset, but technically, obviously getting in the zone would be even better. We'll put these back on. So far, all that reduction, though, is implying that they probably want to keep it stuck at core ranges into the real-time close. And I think these are all probably around that 6802, 03, like those neutral ranges. All right, let's see. What do you guys think? Give me a number. I would prefer that they pin above 8-4, closer to these areas, just because it would give us better odds. But that being said, it doesn't mean that we have to. Anywhere above 7-8 technically is still a good pin. Even above 6-8, 7-1 is still technically a good pin. So it's not like these are bad areas anyway, even if they took us back here. How much time is left in this stick? Because remember what we said, even if they close us in the green, that's still a decent spot. Eight, 2, 7, 5. That's not bad. Where did they take this to? 7, 9. That's still okay. I don't think that that's a terrible spot to close. They're still very calculated core areas. And they can obviously try turning this back around here in the next like 10, 15 minutes. And maybe try giving us some pins in the zone. Let's see what they do by the 4:15. I'll stick around for a few more minutes just to see if they can engulf this back for 4 o'clock. How much time is left here? They'd have to try like retracting over 8-4. 6, 7, 8, 4. Those are still going to be my max ranges for the whole session today. So I'll just leave those. I'll leave those as like the max ranges for the whole session since they wanted to reduce this. And if they turn it around between 401, 405, they definitely could come back and try retesting those highs. Okay? Six, 7, 8, 4 being retested here. See if they can come back and clear 8, 8. What's the one thing that you guys learned from today's session? Today's a really important session for us. What's something that you guys learned today? This is crazy. Izzy assistant. These fucking fake accounts, there's so many of them. If we're looking around odds, then they had odds basically off these lows and highs. Okay, and the turnaround. If they don't turn it around by this like 305, 405, 06, 07 window, then they might just kind of keep it stuck in between here, like between 78, 81, 83, 84, 85. Oh, it's okay, Katie. Where did you end up covering? I did cover some here though too. Like I covered those 2 contracts here, then I covered a bit more here. But I have my Wednesday calls, so that's another reason why it helped me hold a bit, because I bought some time. But then I did try another long down here for today's expiration when they held. I added a bit more right here, and then I ended up starting to cover. I covered a lot though at 8-8 when they broke like the 90 before 354, just in case we got that 354, 355 volatility. I covered on the 50 and 51 stick. At 3-3 down here. You guys didn't even wait for 6744 or 46. 3-3 wasn't even a big overhead. 4446 was, and 4446 is what can get you a minimum of 6.5 and potentially 7.8. But there was re-entries right here too, though. Like you guys could have easily re-entered off the 50s. Like right in here. This was a good re-entry. So was this. These core holds right here. These were good re-entries. But this was the best re-entry this afternoon, and then this odd right here for the 67 80s. This was a bit more of a riskier trade right here, but we had that odd going into end of day. But oh, okay, that's not bad. Like this area here was not bad. This was still a pretty good move too. Like this to here was still 34 points. Do you see this? It's okay. At least we still have tomorrow. So there's still tomorrow, and there's still tomorrow, and there's still Friday. And I feel like this week is, remember how I said I think a lot of people are going to think that it's going to be a small range week? I called Brendan out for that yesterday. Short week? I'm like, it's not one of those short weeks though. Sorry, we have too much risk. We have too much that we have to retrace. There's too much at stake. It's not just because it's a short week. It's when is it a short week? It's a short week on the 24th and 28th after backtesting and breaking 346 points in range. The market has too much pressure to retrace. Okay, so just because something is a short week doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get range. Everything's relative to like your market dynamics and where you're trading. Does that make sense, you guys? It's not about it being a short week. And I had mentioned that yesterday. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a short week. What does that even mean? Who cares if it's a short week? Sometimes, yes. But we have odds of this on a shorter week, even though it is a shorter week. That's a 256 point move. But the idea is it's not about it being a shorter week. It's about the kind of conditions we have to meet during these time periods. The market doesn't care if it's a short week, if there's specific structural flip dates that occur during this week. If we had no structural flips or no major range to retrace, then okay, I don't really care, right? Yeah, like this here probably implies that they're trying to keep this stuck into this close, which is also fine. But does that make sense? And that's why I was saying I don't agree with this. It's just I don't care if it's a holiday week. It's not about it being a holiday week. It's about the fact that we have odds this week. And that's why I have mentioned this. And Brendan, I'm not calling you out for this. I'm just saying, like, I think this will be the week that kind of throws everyone off, right? Because we have too much risk if we don't retrace, and 24th and 28th are flip dates. That means that they have way too much pressure to not retrace. Friday is a flip date, so the final date ahead of that would be tomorrow. And that's why I don't want you guys thinking that, no, we could easily get back to the channel this week. Okay? If they break 672731 ahead of mid-session, that was yesterday, we would already have 128 to 132 point odds in play. Did we not break that yesterday, you guys? Did we not break 6728 and 32 yesterday? Yes, we did. Right? Did that not automatically give you an odd of 128 to 132 points, which can get you to 6788? If I'm not telling you guys these things ahead of time, I wouldn't care. I'm flat out saying it. Okay. Do you know of any other traders that flat out say these things? These are insane ranges. Do you know how scared people are of being wrong? Especially if they're saying this to like a big group of people. Do you guys understand how scary it is to be wrong and have big targets like this to a big group of people? I'm obviously confident for a reason, because obviously there's math involved. There's time restrictions involved. There's specific market dynamics involved. Okay, where did we stall yesterday? By the way, I said that before we got anywhere close to 6728. Okay, that was before we even got anywhere near there. Okay, so where did they stall yesterday? Where did we stall yesterday? Literally 28 and 32. We stalled at exactly 673175. Where did we stall overnight? Where did they take us overnight and stall us? 3-2. How many points can we move from there? Well, we've already moved 34, 44, 60, 64. That's why these 66 areas would be even better. They could literally get us back to these ranges in here. We didn't really have high odds of expanding overnight after we stalled, which could be another reason why they're delaying this move a little bit, but I think you guys get the idea. So we've already had these odds to begin with. It's not like they were like... It's not like I'm just randomly making up these numbers. We already know that these areas are calculated ranges for us. What's the big areas for the week? I'm going to cover my... I have a few contracts left that I left to see if they'd retrace. I'm going to cover these. What's an area that we figured that they could retrace? Hey? What's our weekly targets, you guys? We hit our ranges as early as today. We hit 6788. That means we're tracking. Did we not draw this on the weekend? And then to potentially get back to here? To channel here? Yeah, we could easily get... If we get back there tomorrow and the channel, guess what we have an odd of doing on Friday? I just took my last contracts off here. I wanted to wait to see for the last 2 minutes if they bring it back. No? Where could we get to by Friday? We already have odds of getting into the zone tonight. We have all night tonight. This would be... Overnight tonight is half the week, by the way. This is the midweek session because we have a shorter week. So tonight's overnight session is midweek. We already are closing above a 256 point ratio. I bet none of you guys even noticed that. Did any of you guys notice that or no? How many people actually were paying attention to that? Who was paying attention to this, into the close? Did you guys notice where they closed? $256 point ratio into the close. Off those lows. They also closed at the 107 point mark. Off today's lows. I'm just giving you guys all the areas of confluence. Okay, 107 points off today's lows. Where else did they close? The 150, 151 point ratio. What's the big overhead that we're working with right now? For overnight. It's pretty obvious, but especially off weekly open, weekly close. These are the 150 point ratios. This is what can get us here. We're working with roughly These 150, 173 point ratios here for overnight. These areas are huge for overnight tonight in terms of getting back to the neutral zone. If they can clear this area overnight tonight, 6799, 6798, 6801, 6804, 05, we can easily get those 6820s. That's going to be half of 346. That's going to set us up for a potentially really good move back to the channel. And if we start measuring even off of, like I said, like these real-time lows, we have yet to clear this. This was the 115, 118 point stall right here. Notice that they stalled right at 115 points. They couldn't close over that. Had they closed this just 1 point higher, you guys, look, they just needed a tiny bit higher, okay, in terms of closing. Do you see that? Then they stalled. They just need to get back over this range in here, and we'd be on track for starters of getting back to 6,800, 6,801. Do you see the confluence? These are 128 to 132 points off real-time lows. I'm giving you guys overnight conditions right now, by the way. Izzy's overnight conditions are we sustain core areas, ideally above 6766, 6768, and get into the neutral zone ranges of 6799. Someone write this down, please. And 6806, 6804. These are the 150, 173, 132 point ranges off opening range, off lows, off close. This is what would set us up for getting the wider breaks back to 6820s, which would also be the same thing as the 150 point ratio here off today's lows. If we measure off of today's lows in real time, if we did 173 points, it should get us back to our channel, like close to that 6844, 6848, and I think that's going to be the top of the channel, or pretty freaking close to it. Yes, it is. Okay, so that would put some channel odds in play for us for as early as tomorrow. Getting to the channel as early as tomorrow is the only way we would have odds of doing what? If they brought us to the channel as early as tomorrow. And this is off. This is off the weekly high or low, 173 points. Okay, or the weekly open. If they bring us to these areas as early as tomorrow, what kind of odd does that give us? Not all-time highs for this week, for Friday. I don't think we'll test all-time highs by Friday. That would be insane. We only have a day and a half left. They'd have to get some crazy range overnight above 68, 20s, and 30s for that to even be possible. At the very least, if we can get to the zone as early as overnight tonight and get to the channel, think about it. The channel is around that 320, 330 point ratio that I always talk about. If they can do that as early as tomorrow, what kind of odd could we have for Friday? At the least. What kind of a week is it? I don't think we'll get zone odds this week. I think those odds are super low. What kind of areas could we trigger Friday? And this would also be the same thing as a 346 point ratio from these lows. Where could we trigger as early as Friday? This would be an expansion scenario, which we don't always get. And these areas should align with these structural highs and lows. It's not that I don't think we can get that. It's just, okay, like if you look at this, look, do you see that? And then if we measure from open close, okay, there should be some confluence here. I don't think we'll get that this week, but no, you guys, if we trigger 6820s tomorrow, tonight or tomorrow, what could you get by Friday? Potentially, if you get to the channel. No. What kind of a week is it? Why do you guys always fetch too low or too high? That would be a massive expansion scenario if that was the case. Like if that was the case, no, you guys. What kind of we're already potentially in the zone. That's not an expansion. What kind of areas could we trigger? I'm just writing these so that you guys have these. These are not the answers. Core areas. It's a core week. Exactly. What areas would that potentially imply for us if they get the 68 20s and 30s and get to the channel as early as tomorrow? Where could they take us to by Friday? Friday's a big flip date. Even though we have some odds of getting back to 6888 and retesting 6906, okay? And these areas are obviously linked back with these highs. I don't think that that's happening this week. What could happen this week? What are areas of confluence for us? Yeah, 6870s, right? That would make sense. Okay, those are core ranges. Correct? What other areas are mid-core ranges that they could take it to? What are some mid-core areas that they could maybe take it to? So 346 off lows is 6,871. No, mid-core areas. 88 is not a core area. That's not even anywhere close to being a core area. Mid-core areas. What are mid-core ranges? We opened at a mid-core area this week. This is a mid-core area. What could be another probability? This is if they want to give mid-range. They don't want to give you the full 346. Maybe they give you 320, 330. What would that equate to? Or maybe they give you off weekly lows, 220, 230. Hint, hint. These are mid ratios, mid-core. Hello. What would that give you? If you don't get full range, but you get about mid-range. The 50s, 5.2 to 5.8. 6852 to 6858 is mid-core ratios. Okay, this is roughly 230 or 220 to 230 or 320 to 330. Basically where they leave that 26 to 33 points out, okay? The offset. Everyone's on the same page? If they give you 346 points, you're going to get 3,871 core areas. It's a core week. Those are core areas. Okay? You guys are so... 6910 is not a core area. 6888 is not a core area. I don't even know where you guys are getting these numbers from. 6820 is a core area, Aruli, but that's too low. This is too low. That's not an expansion scenario. An expansion scenario is when you break more than half your range. Breaking more than half your range is breaking 173 points. Does that make sense? Or breaking 256 points. Okay? And because this has been a core week, look at these closing points. 66.31, that's a core close. 66.25, that's a core hold. 66.54, that's a core open. 66.74, that's a core hold. 67.25, that's a core close. 67.26, that's a core open. 67.80, that's a core close. Core areas get you core price points. What are core price points? 20s, 30s, like lower 30s, between 20 to 3.2. Okay, between 5.2 to 5.8. Are you guys on the same page? Technically the 66 to 68 is core, but it's not really high enough. I usually like 70, 78, 81, 84. Okay? Those are the areas that have the highest confluence this week. Everyone's on the same page? Because if we end up going to 68, 70s and you guys are crying that you missed it, I don't want to hear about it, because we already know what kind of odds we have relative to how much range they retrace. And if they give us back a 346 point break, then we have odds of getting there. If they don't want to give us the full break, okay, they might give us 173 points. 173 points off this week's open is, guess what? What area is that? If they broke us 173 points off this week's open, what kind of an area is that? Core. Could 68.20s be a potential max range for the week off open? Or a closing point for the week? Because that's off open, that's not off lows. Off lows, though, could they push 230 points, and that could give us 5.5, 5.6, 5.8, another mid-core? That would be the same thing as, that could also be technically the same thing as like 200 points off lows. I don't really know how else to explain that. Okay. A mass scenario would be, obviously, if they broke us off weekly lows, which I don't really see them doing this, but 256 points off weekly lows is these core areas, okay? 6881, 6885, okay? If we look, and this is off weekly lows, okay? Off Monday's lows. Off of the actual lows right here, this is also 346 points in range in these 70s. So 256 points off last week's lows and this week's lows are core ranges. Do you guys think that that's a coincidence? So 6781 to 688581. Core areas off lows, 256 to 346 points. The advantage that we have right now is if they do what? How could we potentially have this as a probability? What would they have to do? Do you think that that's a coincidence? Do you guys think that that's a coincidence that they'd have to close there? I think not. In order to have that odd, they probably have to close at these 256 point ranges, which are also core areas. This is off. Do you guys see what I'm saying? Okay, does this kind of close here, in here, this area here, give you an odd of getting to your next core breaks? What's the minimum area that we want to close today's session? That's why I kept saying, even though 7174 is good, it's still a better reset than these shitty spots at 61, 64, 65. Ideally, I would want over 678. Why do you guys think that is? Why do we want to close above 7.8? And the only reason why we could afford a little bit of risk down is because our calculated area down here was closer to 2450. So technically speaking, off 2450, no, it's not. You guys, I'm giving you the exact answer. How do you guys still get that wrong? Off 2450, 2425, technically we could afford to close close to here, okay? No. What are these areas? That would be a 256 point close. How do you guys already forget that? Which is the same thing as that 173 point hold. Okay, this 173 point hold right here is half of 346. I don't know how many times I have to keep going over this, but that hold could get you this type of break. Do you see the confluence in this area here? Maybe I just have to draw lines. 256 points. 256 point close. Okay? I don't know how else to make this make sense. That's a 256 point close. This right here. This right here. Okay? That can get you 346 point breaks or 256 point extensions. This can get you here. This is the same thing as 346 points. Okay. Do you see it? Or a 256 point extension. Do you see that? Off of this week's lows. Okay. Off this week's open, that's when you'd have like these kind of odds. Which we don't really, that's not required this week. 256 points, however, off the 173 point break right here and sustainment off 6696 is all-time highs. Do you see why these areas are calculated? This is recorded, so please re-watch this if you don't get it, because you guys, come on. We drew this literally on the weekend. Come on, before the market even opened. I drew this exact arrow to these areas here. So, like, you guys cannot be missing these trades. There's no way you guys missed a 256 point reversal. Come on. Off of core ranges. And I'm telling you right now, they could take this back to 68, 70s and 80s. Okay? If you miss that, that's on you. They could easily also stall the 20s if they wanted to. That's still fine. Because we still have odds of, we have to kind of go back and remember, well, what kind of patterns do we still have here? Let's see. So we already knew that the 4-day was the nasty bear reversal. That flips on the 28th, okay? This is for those of you that struggle with math or price, okay? If you're better with structure, who's better with structure? If you're better with structure, you only have until tomorrow for this to try getting back in this range right here. That's why we could trigger those 68.50s, okay? If you're better with structure, this area in here, like the median point, is probably half the range. So you probably want to try getting back to the 68.20s. That's half this bar, half of mid-supply, okay? I don't know who's better here with structure, but you want to get back here, at least. At least that way you have a 50% odd, okay? Does that make sense? These areas in here. Okay? This is structural basis. We're trying, remember how I said we could have a third bar exhaustion? Who remembers this? I went over this last week or 2 weeks ago. We could have a third bar exhaustion because this is invalidated. This low was not taken out before the 17th. Remember how I said that this is a void candle? This doesn't count. It doesn't count because we had odds of negating by the 21st and 24th. Do you see how these overlap one another? This is a bull flip. This is a bull flip. This was the bear flip. They didn't do it on the 17th. They did it after the 17th. That voids this. Remember how I said that these could be filler days? This is voided. Do you see it now? I talked about this last week and the week before. This is the void scenario I discussed, okay? And I said that this is why sometimes you see a third bar exhaustion, not a fourth bar. because they didn't take out the low. This is not valid. It's not a valid continuation for a 3-bar down, okay? This is what could extend you from the 28th to the 4th. Or at the very least, get you back nesting in here, which is fine. They don't have to come back and retest highs by then. Okay? What else do we have? 6-day also flips on the 28th. 8-day runs till the 4th. Okay, perfect, because that means our 4-day could run till then. Our 9-day isn't really a good structure currently, but that has some odds for the 8th. And I really, really liked how these could come back and flag. Okay, so 10-day could do what? This runs until the 2nd. What could they do on the 10-day? By December 1st. If that flips on the 2nd, the last trading day on that would be the 1st of the month. What could they do on this 10-day pattern? Like at the very least, you guys better get better at structure. What could they do on this 10-day pattern? You guys think? Especially if they get to the 75% range as early as, let's calculate this. Let's see. What's the median point here? There, so we want to hit 75% of the range. Okay. What's 75% of 10 bars? I'm going to make you guys use your brains. 75% of the range, you want to hit it by 75% of the time, okay? 75% of the time. This runs from the 17th to the 1st. When's the 75% time ratio here? Seven and a half days, 7.5 bars, right? When does that fall? Tomorrow. Tomorrow's 75% of the time range on that 10-day. If they trigger 75% of their range at 75% of the time range, that gives them an odd of doing what on this 10-day time frame? What could this potentially set up to do by the 1st? I'm staying overtime, guys, so you guys can see all these structures. What could that do by the 1st? If these conditions are met tomorrow. What kind of a pattern is this? What kind of a structure is this? This took out lows. What kind of a bar would that end up being if they came back and took out these areas here? That's the 6909, which again has so much confluence. Okay. Why does it have confluence? That's a 256 point range. It's not a coincidence. 256 points from this week's open is 6910.75. That would take out that high. What kind of a candle would that be? Very basic candle theory. That's an engulfing candle. That's an outside bar. Okay, so if you break 256 points from this week's open, you can engulf on the 10-day. Specifically if you hit 75% of the range at 75% of the time interval. Does that make sense? When you're looking at this from a time to price theory, okay? I'm trying to show you guys how to measure odds, okay? When's the midpoint in time? So if this runs from here to here, and tomorrow is 75% of the time range, tomorrow and overnight, that means, when is the half point here? When's 50% of the time? Here, this week's open. Isn't that insane? This weekly open is 50% of the time interval. That could get you 100% of the range. Isn't that crazy? So we have odds of testing 6909.50 by December 1st. We also had some odds on the 11 day, which is another potential engulfing pattern, but this one is more linked to highs. This one is linked to Friday. Okay. And then we also have the engulfing scenario for the 12 day. What I think this one is, I don't think that this one could engulf by Friday. I feel like that's too much range. Like getting back to all-time highs by Friday, I feel like that might be hard. But what I think we could do is we could get back to the core ranges. Do you see this? 5-7, 5-6 by the 28th. So like this is why this could also be a probability. Right? And then these could also end up being some flags. This runs till the 8th. Flagging scenarios means we could take out all-time highs by the 5th, 6th, 7th. Do you see what I'm saying? And you don't even have to take out highs this week to do that, or next week. You just have to break those structures on those smaller frames, which is breaking 256 points from this week's opening range. This also runs till the 12th. And we have multiple flips on the 16th. Okay. Is 16th when the market could start getting a little bit exhausted? Maybe. Is that what could keep odds in play of our 7K break? Potentially. So I hope this helped you guys, at least in terms of structure. Like, I feel like you guys are on the right track, but you guys are missing very key details. So before I sign off here, where do we want to close above and why? Just a simple answer to this. I already gave you guys this answer like 4 times, but where do we want to close today and why? And don't just give me some answer. Give me the answer and the reason why. And why, what's that area? Where do we want to close today? Today is very important. Today is a big day for retracting range. 256 points, exactly. Right? So that we can, so 200, we want to close at 256 points above that 6525 low, which is close to like this 7975, 80.5. Do you see why they're keeping it stuck here, you guys? This isn't, it's not a coincidence that they're like keeping it in this area here into the close. That's a very calculated close. Yes, in order to have odds of tracking 256 points off weekly open, right? Or 346 points off the 21st lows. Is the 24th linked to the 28th? And to the 24th? Yes, it is. Right? These days are linked. So, of course, getting these 256 point closing points can really, especially look, these are 132 point breaks here. That's the zone. That's not a coincidence. This is what can essentially or eventually get us back to retest these areas here. And these are the spots that failed at the beginning of the month on November 3rd flip, remember? What was our condition for November 3rd? And especially for the flip day on the 31st. 69.20s, we failed, right? This could reset this, okay? For the new month. It's the same thing. It's the conditions are basically reset. Do you see that? Isn't that really interesting? So basically these areas can get us to the zone and they could give us a 69.10 retest and a 69.20s for the first week of December, which can eventually get us back to basically retesting and breaking all-time highs. And that's what could keep these core ranges intact for this week. I don't know if we're going to get this, but this isn't for this week. This is for, I think we said the second and first, right? But that could keep us on track for that. I think for this week, maybe closer to, I don't even know if we can get 80s this week, honestly. I wasn't even really looking for that. I was just looking for us to get back to this mid area here that we talked about. But if they want to get us all the way back to the 68, 70s, I'm not going to complain. And 68, 80s. Okay, so is this a very calculated close for us today? Yes, it is. Okay. If we close here today, which is also a core area, which is also 256 points, we could definitely be tracking to get back to all-time highs, like long story short, for by as early as December 7th or 8th. I also was paying attention to this candle just to kind of see where they break. And I realized that these areas were kind of linked to that. And then when I went back to remember how we measure 692 and 96? Because those are 346 by 2. It's basically where they stalled this area in here. Okay, so getting those structure breaks is what could get us those breaks at the 69, 20s, and 30s. There's just a lot of confluence that I don't want you guys to, I wouldn't want them to have this big of a move and then you guys miss this, okay? Especially if they can get us back to these areas here. Because they are really aligned. And this, we stalled 5375. Go back and read the report from October. That was a really calculated spot. Obviously getting a break of the means would have been ideal. Getting these core breaks in here is eventually what can get us to 7K. And this week's opening range of 346 points is 7,000. Okay. This is recorded, guys, for those sub to Twitch, and then is also posted on YouTube if you want to go back and restudy this session tonight or over the weekend. I'm thinking that they're just going to pin it here, really. So